NIC, got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
Chris, this shit fire.
Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of JT Sports Live. I'm your host, JT, and week 4 of the 2024 NFL season, or week 4 of the 2024 NFL season, man, absolute chaos. It seems like every week it's a lot of unexpected outcomes that go on. You got the Philadelphia Eagles bringing the Saints back to earth. Who would have thought that the Carolina Panthers actually had some weapons now that they made the quarterback change from Bryce Young to Andy Dalton? The Red Rifle, he was letting out shots against the Las Vegas Raiders, man. I got some thoughts on his incredible performance. Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens escaped disaster against the Dallas Cowboys. The Steelers beat the Chargers. We got to talk about Chiefs versus Falcons, some controversial calls in that game. Antonio Pierce made some cryptic comments after the Raiders lost to Carolina. He said that a few individuals on that team made some business decisions during the game, and the Raiders are going to have to make some business decisions of their own. What does he mean about those comments? Is he throwing shade at a certain somebody at wide receiver? I got thoughts on Will Levis, Anthony Richardson. Shout out to everybody that's tuned into this episode of JT Sports Live. Shout out DW. He says, WJT, push it up. He also gives us a $10 donation. He says, let's go. Greatly appreciate you, my friend. Appreciate you for supporting the channel. Appreciate you for donating 10 to the grind. Shout out to Eddie Polito. He says, Andy Dalton made the Raiders quit. He says, I hate this league sometimes. Yeah, man, it's just madness every week. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in on X, YouTube. Smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content and when we go live. Remember that we are not just a YouTube channel, we are a podcast. You can find this episode and all of our other ones on Apple, Spotify, Amazon. If you enjoy, give us a 5-star review. And follow us on Instagram at JTSports_ and on X at JTSports__. Send in some topic suggestions or questions that you would like answered. Let's get into it. The Kansas City Chiefs take down the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday Night Football. This is one of the first Sunday night games that I've seen the Falcons play in a couple of years, you don't really see the Atlanta Falcons in a lot of primetime games, so it was refreshing to see them get a Sunday night spot, and this was a pretty good game. And when you play Kansas City, you know, you're always going to have some questionable calls that tend to favor them. That's just what comes with playing this team. You got to be able to execute in the fourth quarter. And the Atlanta Falcons were unable to do that. You were in the 4th-and-1 situation. Why not just run the football up the gut or just do the tush push? Even if Kirk Cousins is slow, he doesn't have any mobility. You mean to tell me that you can't push this dude to get 1 yard? Come on, what are we doing? Why are we calling toss plays to the outside against one of the faster, more athletic defenses in the NFL? And when I watch the Falcons play this year, the offense, to me, doesn't tend to play up to its capability. You got a pretty good group of wide receivers. Your offensive line is pretty good as well. Kirk Cousins is a capable quarterback, and Bijan Robinson is a stud. Why not open up the playbook a little bit more? You know, get a little bit more innovative, be a little bit more aggressive. And even for Kirk Cousins, there's times when you have a 3rd and 2, a 3rd and short, and all he has to do is just run out the pocket and pick up some yards and get the first down. But he just seems scared or timid to run the football. I get that Kirk Cousins is unathletic, but you should at least be able to pick up 3 or 2 yards in today's NFL. He's just too stationary for me, man. He needs a little bit more mobility in his game. And the play calling and the lack of mobility that Kirk Cousins has is holding Atlanta back offensively from reaching their potential. Their defense is really good. You saw how good their secondary played tonight against Patrick Mahomes. Justin Simmons, who they signed right before the season, had a big interception early in the first quarter. If you could just get a little bit more juice out of your offense, you could be more than capable of being a 10, 11-win team this year. And Kansas City, their defense is still carrying them in the majority of games that they played. And I don't know how you guys feel about Patrick Mahomes, but in my opinion, I don't believe that he's been playing his best football these last 2 years. We know that he turns it on in the playoffs, but in the regular season, this offense for Kansas City just seems to be coasting by. I remember when you had Tyreek Hill 3-4 years ago, you were one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. You were always able to get big plays downfield in the passing game. But instead, now, you're more of a methodical offense that's predicated off ball control, running the football, winning the time possession battle, and having slow, rhythmatic passes to drive downfield. And, you know, the fact that Kansas City can't stretch the field like what they used to be able to do early during the Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid era, you can kind of see why this defense has played at the level that they've had. Because they kind of have had no choice to. They have bailed this offense out on a couple of occasions. And the night you saw this defense stuff the Falcons on 4th-and-1, they held Bijan Robinson and the rest of the Falcons' rushing attack in check. And Kansas City, although you only have one reliable option, which is Rashee Rice in the passing game, Travis Kelce looks like a shell of himself. Maybe Taylor Swift has distracted him to the point where he isn't able to play at the level that he once used to. But, you know, Kansas City offensively, You would think that this team would be a little bit better than what they were last year, but they're not really all that different from what they were in 2023. The offensive line still has their fair share of problems. You made a change at left tackle. You started the rookie out of BYU that you drafted in the 2nd round for the first couple of games, and then you switched to Wanya Morris, and I really just don't see it with the Kansas City offense. Maybe they'll end up getting better throughout the year, but this is kind of the same offense that we saw last year. Not really dynamic, just slow, methodical, not as explosive as they once used to be. But Rashee Rice, the more I watch this dude, the more that I'm starting to believe that he's becoming an elite wide receiver quietly. in the league. Nobody seems to talk about how good Rashee Rice is. And it's crazy because he plays for Kansas City. Everybody talks about the Chiefs, but nobody really gives Rashee Rice the praise that he deserves. By the end of this season, I can easily see Rashee Rice being a top 10 wide receiver. He's always open. He has reliable hands. He's great after the catch. He's one of the best wideouts in the league once he gets the ball after his hands because he is able to break off tackles. He's pretty big, physical, and athletic for his size. A lot of guys are going to have a hard time tackling him in the open field. But outside of him, there's not too many great options that Kansas City has when it comes to their passing game. You got Xavier Worthy, who you spent the first-round pick on. We saw him make a name for himself in week 1, but ever since then, he's been kind of quiet, and he seems more right now to be a gadget player or just a deep threat than he is as being a reliable wide receiver. I can't call you reliable if you're only dependable in certain situations. You know, and he hasn't really been that great when it comes to Mahomes targeting him deep down the field, being able to utilize his speed, outrunning everybody in the secondary. You know, Kansas City offensively, they're not that good, but their defense was a large reason why they were able to win this game tonight. Patrick Mahomes, he played decent, but he isn't playing up to the standard that we've been accustomed to seeing out of him. But the Chiefs get the win Sunday night, 22-17. The Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson, they escaped disaster against the Dallas Cowboys. For the first 3 quarters, they were utterly dominating Dallas. They were running the football down their throat. Derrick Henry finished this game with 151 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. He was averaging 6 yards per carry, and the Ravens were actually featuring him in this offense. They gave him the most carries that they've given him all year long, with 25 attempts. And it was expected for the Ravens to have success in this game due to the injuries and the lack of talent that the Cowboys have on the interior of their defensive line. And they had a combined total of 274 rushing yards. And Dallas was down 28-6 to start the 4th. And prior to the final 15 minutes of this game, Dallas offense, the passing attack in particular, they couldn't really get anything going. Dak Prescott wasn't that good. Him and CeeDee Lamb had a little exchange on the sideline. But on their final 3 possessions in the 4th, they scored they scored a couple of touchdowns. They made the ball game once they recovered the onside kick. And I was just looking at Baltimore, and I was like, man, y'all just blew a lead in the 4th quarter last week against the Las Vegas Raiders. Are y'all about to do this thing again against the Dallas Cowboys? Justin Tucker missed the field goal. We're not talking enough about how washed Justin Tucker looks this year. I get that he's a kicker, but it's not like he's just any kicker. He's arguably the greatest kicker in NFL history, and he's missed a field goal in every game, and we're not talking enough about it. Justin Tucker, to me, looks washed, and I don't know if you're Baltimore, how trustworthy Justin Tucker is if you need him to get a game-winning field goal to seal the win for you. And that big miss that he had late in this game was the main catalyst for Dallas being able to engineer somewhat of a comeback. Now, thank you, God, for Lamar Jackson, because he saved Baltimore from choking in this game. On the final drive, he got a big run on first down to seal the win for Baltimore. And before that, he made a big throw to keep the drive alive to Zay Flowers. But the Baltimore Ravens right now, it just looks like they're skating by. Yeah, it's their first win of the season, but I still got a lot of concerns with them moving forward. The offensive line played good, but Dallas, just from the injuries that they have on the D-line, they weren't able to test the Baltimore Ravens pass blocking because they were able to be so dominant running the football. But this is a team that you just can't trust with a lead in the 4th quarter. And they're not really a team that I still believe is playing up to their potential. I still have concerns about the coaching staff. It's like you should have easily been able to coast to a win in this thing. You had the game in the palm of your hands, and you almost gave it away by allowing the Dallas Cowboys to make somewhat of a comeback. And it's just the fact that they've blown so many leads in the fourth quarter over these last couple of years. I think it's a big reason why we haven't seen Lamar in a Super Bowl yet. Because in big games, certain moments when it's on the line, they kind of whiff. You know, like Dallas should have got blown out. This game should have been like 40-6. They never should have been able to come back, but there were just some missed field goals by Justin Tucker, some coaching decisions that were kind of questionable still. And, you know, if it wasn't for Lamar, they would be 0-3 right now. He's playing at an MVP level once again. I could see Lamar Jackson winning his third MVP this year. I mean, he's literally carrying Baltimore. Not only is he carrying the load for them on the ground in most of these games, but in big spots, third down, game on the line, you need Lamar Jackson to make a play. It seems like he's always stepping up and he's delivering. And unlike week 1 against Kansas City, he was able to come through and win this game for Baltimore with that big run that he had late to get another first down and allow Baltimore to knee out the rest of the game. But this just was a really weird game because, I mean, 28-6, I thought it was over once Derrick Henry broke off another big touchdown run. I mean, this thing really was more one-sided than what the final score shows. But kudos to Dallas for fighting to the end. They showed a lot of resiliency in this game. But I just kind of feel like it was a comeback wasted. You know, even after they got the onside kick and they scored, I still was like, Baltimore should win this thing. And if not, you got to fire John Harbaugh at this point. Because there's no way you can choke a 28-6 lead to the Dallas Cowboys in the fourth quarter. Dallas is not that good of a team. They really aren't. So I was kind of surprised that Baltimore had the little meltdown that they did. But thankfully, you got LaMarvelous on your team, and he was able to seal the win for you. The Philadelphia Eagles brought the New Orleans Saints back down to earth. They were able to beat them 15-12, and this could have been a more convincing win for Philadelphia if it wasn't for Jalen Hurts having the turnover bug. Jalen Hurts has been a little bit reckless with the football these last couple of years. Would y'all agree? Under Shane Steichen, when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl a few years ago, he was really efficient at taking care of the ball, but now he just has a lot of turnovers that have started to plague him. But although he did have a few turnovers in this game, Philly was still able to tough it out in the end. And Saquon Barkley is once again proven to be the best offseason addition by any team. He was carrying Philly offensively. Jalen Hurts, they were banged up when it came to the receivers. A.J. Brown was out. Devontae Smith left at some point of this game due to concussion. So all he really had was Saquon and Dallas Goedert. But Saquon Barkley, 8.6 yards per carry. He had a big touchdown in the second half of this game. And he had 146 rushing yards. And he definitely was able to make a statement that play that he had last week against the Atlanta Falcons, it wasn't him. You normally see Saquon stepping up in big crucial moments of the game. That drop was really uncharacteristic of him. And with CMC being out, you know, Saquon Barkley has looked like the best running back in football with how dynamic he is, his explosiveness, just his ability to see the hole, make a cut, and just take it to the house is really impressive. And in my opinion, Saquon Barkley is one of the most talented running backs that we've had in the NFL in the past decade. I don't think that we've seen a better athlete at running back than Saquon with just how explosive he is as a back. And the defense for Philadelphia finally showed up. For all the talent that they have on that side of the football, all of the high draft picks that they've had, you would expect this performance to be better than what we've seen in these past two games. You know, against Green Bay, you got lit up. Against the Atlanta Falcons, Kirk Cousins got a comeback win against you, torching that defense. Only took on 4 big throws to get the Falcons in the scoring range. But to their credit, they were able to shut down the Saints offense that's been scorching hot as of late. They were dropping 40 burgers in their first couple of games. They held Alvin Kamara to only 87 yards on the ground, no touchdowns. The Saints offense as a whole, they only had 2 field goals in the touchdown, and they were averaging 4 yards per play. And that just shows you when Philadelphia is able to play up to the level of talent that they have on that side of football, they have the potential to be the best defense in the NFL. Vic Fangio is a really good defensive coordinator. So for Philadelphia, you would expect to see the performance that they had defensively in this game replicated throughout this season. I don't know why they've struggled so badly these first couple of games, but this is the defense I expected to see coming into this year. Jalen Carter, he had a great game, and he also got into it after the game or a little bit late in the game after the Eagles had sealed the win. They got a Derek Carr interception. He was talking shit to a few Saints players and whatnot. He was getting into it with the fans. Like, I love Jalen Carter. This is everything that you want in a defensive tackle. He's not really nice. He's not friendly. He has some character issues, which I think it's a positive if you're a defensive tackle, man. I don't want my defensive tackles to be nice guys. I want my defensive tackles to be aggressive, have a lot of attitude. They're willing to fight. I mean, he had like 3-4 staff members on the Philadelphia Eagles holding them back. Nick Sirianni had to come talk to him. It's like, I just love watching Jalen Carter play when he's playing at his best. And he acknowledged before this game that he wasn't playing his best football, and he stepped up. He was a big reason why New Orleans wasn't able to get anything going on the ground. And I don't really believe that New Orleans is a fraud. This is just their first loss of the season. They do have a pretty talented team. Their defense was really good in this game. They did force some turnovers from Jalen Hurts. It's just that Philadelphia just had all the answers for New Orleans offensively. And Derek Carr kind of reverted back to the version that we seen last year. Just taking a lot of checkdowns, unable to throw the deep ball with a lot of accuracy. You know, New Orleans, it looks like they're human after all. They aren't the super team that they appeared to be the past 2 weeks. But with how the NFC South is playing out, they definitely are well in the mix to win this division. So I'm just not going to count them off yet. I got to see a few more weeks of them struggling to say, okay, like New Orleans fooled us all. I still think they have the capability of being a great team, especially with the struggles that Tampa Bay had today, losing to the Denver Broncos in blowout fashion. Atlanta, they're 1-2. So the Saints are more than good enough to win this division, which isn't really that great. If the Tennessee Titans had a better quarterback than Will Levis, they would be 2-1 right now. They got dominated by the Packers today. A main reason why is because Will Levis just looks like Jameis Winston 2.0. He had a touchdown early in this game, and then a few possessions later, he throws an interception, and then he has a pick six to Jair Alexander. He had a fumble, and his costly turnovers have costed Tennessee these first 3 games, because against the New York Jets, he had a stupid fumble that caused him to get cussed out by Brian Callahan in the red zone. Like, he's just too reckless to be trusted to be your quarterback one of the future. And I was telling my homeboy, because he picked the Titans to win this game, and I was telling him, bro, what are you doing investing money into Will Levis being the starting quarterback? Because if you're taking Tennessee to win, that means that you trust Will Levis to be good enough to lead this team to the win. And he said, even if Will Levis has a couple of turnovers, they can still overcome them. No, you can't. When you're having multiple turnover games, it puts your team at a disadvantage. He said as long as he's not giving the other team points. Well, it didn't take him too long to do so with that gift that he threw Jair Alexander. I mean, come on. Brian Callahan cusses this dude out on the sidelines, but then after the game, he says, we're still rocking with Will Levis as the starting quarterback. You got to move on and go to Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph, he isn't as physically gifted as what Will Levis is, doesn't have the arm strength, doesn't have the mobility that Levis has, but he takes better care of the football than what Levis does. And with the kind of team that Tennessee has, they got a great defense. Their run game is normally pretty good. They were unable to run the football against Green Bay on Sunday, but mostly they are pretty good on the ground. And as long as you have a quarterback that can make the necessary throws, doesn't cost you games with turnovers, you could be a better team than what you are right now. And I know it's early into the season, but you're on 3 right now. And the more games you lose, the bigger hole that you put yourself in, where it doesn't even make any sense to make a quarterback change once you get into week 7 and you're 1-5, 1-6. At that point, you might as well ride it out with Will Levis. Maybe he can turn around, but you still have a chance to be able to keep this ship afloat while you're this early into the year. Just go ahead, eat it that you wasted a second-round draft pick on Will Levis and throw Mason Rudolph out there, because at least he has showed during his time starting for Pittsburgh last year that he's going to be able to take care of the football. The name of the game is not giving the other team extra possessions, and that's what Will Levis does, which makes it hard to win if you're Tennessee. And not just that, but he's overthrowing guys. He can't hit DeAndre Hopkins. He's just too erratic during the games to be a serviceable starting quarterback. And I never was high on Will Levis anyway, because the same issues that we see him have with the Titans right now were the same issues that he had at the University of Kentucky. So Will Levis, I think the experiment just needs to end if Tennessee has any hopes of trying to make it to the postseason. This division is still up for grabs. They're not out of it yet, but the more they keep starting Will Levis, the bigger hole they put themselves in. And once you get to week 10 and you bench Will Levis, it's already too little too late. You got to bench him early while the season still has the opportunity to be turned around for you. This dude ain't cutting it. He had 2 touchdowns as well, but the turnovers just outdo the bad. And he looks a lot like Jameis Winston or what Sam Howell did last year with the Washington Commanders. He's probably going to end up leading the NFL in turnovers. And you just can't keep allowing Will Levis to cost you games. You should be 2-1, possibly 3-0 right now if you have a quarterback that can minimize mistakes. Anthony Richardson, despite helping the Colts get the win over Chicago, he is really struggling right now. In only 3 games, he's thrown 6 interceptions. He's completing under 50% of his passes. And I'm not an Anthony Richardson hater. As a matter of fact, I was a huge defender of his a few months ago. I thought that he was getting too much hate. But over the course of the offseason, the hype train started to build up. You got people comparing him to Cam Newton, thinking that he could have an MVP season like what Cam had in 2015. And the thing that people have to understand with Anthony Richardson is that he hasn't played a lot of football. He's only played 8 games as a starting quarterback in the NFL. He didn't really play that much in college neither. So you got somebody that still is learning what it takes to be a consistent quarterback in the NFL. His accuracy is all over the place. He throws the deep ball more accurately than he throws anything else. And the problem that Indianapolis has right now is that you have a guy in Anthony Richardson that can't hit the layups. He can't hit guys when they're open 5-10 yards down the field. And with him not having a lot of experience under his belt, he's going to be hot and cold this year. You're going to have games like what you saw week 1 against Houston when he threw 2 touchdowns. He kept you in that game. And you're going to have games like you've seen the last 2 weeks, such as what we saw against the Chicago Bears on Sunday, where he just completely falls apart. He implodes and he just throws interceptions all over the place because he still is very raw when it comes to understanding defenses. And he just throws the football with too much oomph on it, if that makes sense. There'll be a guy that's open 7 yards downfield. All he needs to do is just put a little bit of touch on the ball, but instead he's just zipping it. Guys have the ball flying through their hands. It's no wonder why he has so many interceptions, because he doesn't make it easy for the receivers to catch the football. And just watching him play quarterback looks a little bit unnatural. And Anthony Richardson is going to be a roller coaster ride this year. There's going to be games that you win in spite of Anthony Richardson because of how good your run game is and if your defense can show up. But you're going to have games when Anthony Richardson just completely implodes and your defense isn't able to bail him out. But he will have some games when he ends up being on fire like what we saw week 1 against Houston. But there's no reason to panic on Anthony Richardson. He does need to be benched because benching Anthony Richardson, all it does is halt his development. He's only going to get better with more in-game experience. You don't do anything for AR by just keeping him on the bench because with his athleticism, he can keep you in games. And although he's really inaccurate, he'll make a couple of big throws, probably 2 or 3 throughout the game that will result in big plays, possibly touchdowns that can keep you in ball games. But Anthony Richardson right now, he hasn't been that good, but I believe if you're a Colts fan, you got to temper your expectations for this team. This was never going to be a playoff caliber football team due to how young Anthony Richardson is. And Anthony Richardson, I can see him playing at an MVP level next year in 2025, but 2024 for him is still a rookie season because his first season last year got cut short due to an injury. And I think that the reason why they're not running him as much as what they did last year is because despite how big he is, he's 6'5", 255 pounds, he doesn't know how to run without injuring himself. He doesn't know how to slide. He takes too many big hits when he's running with the ball. And it kind of takes away what Indianapolis could be offensively. Because ideally, if AR can put it all together, he could be the second coming to Cam Newton, but more athletic. But right now, it's going to be tough for Indianapolis over these next couple of weeks. Next week, you got to play the Steelers, who have arguably the best defense in the NFL. And, you know, you're just going to have a roller coaster ride when it comes to the Anthony Richardson experience because he is still fairly young. But you got to let him go through these growing pains so he can learn from them and improve. But even if he can put it all together, I never seen him coming out of Florida as being a guy who is going to always complete over 60% of his passes. And Cam Newton, for the majority of his career, he was never the most accurate guy. There probably was only one season throughout Cam Newton's years in the league where he actually was completing over 60% of his passes. So Anthony Richardson isn't going to be a really accurate quarterback. The most he will be is probably be a 60, 61% guy. But the big playability for him is why Indianapolis is going to have a chance to win a few games this year. But just with how inaccurate he is, he just doesn't look comfortable from within the pocket. You know, he makes easy throws harder than what they should be. You're going to probably end up being a 7-6 win team this year because the quarterback play from him is not going to be consistent enough for you to have a winning season. And even though Shane Steichen is a really good offensive coordinator, he has a really good track record of developing quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson coming out, everybody knew this dude was a project. If he would have played more games last season, he probably would have been better this year. But this year really is an extension of his rookie season. But maybe you could see him turn around late during the season when we get to late November, early December. But right now, you know, I don't really see too many things changing with Anthony Richardson. He's just going to be a roller coaster ride. He's going to have some good games. He's going to have some bad games. But hopefully, when he does have those games, when he kind of implodes like how he did against Chicago, your defense can bail you out. And Jonathan Taylor can be effective like what he was today on the ground for you. But moving forward, you got to keep sticking with Anthony Richardson. There's no reason to bench this dude. Indianapolis already knew what it was when they decided to draft him 3rd overall. They knew he was going to be a project. They knew that it wasn't going to just be one of those overnight things when you stick him into a system and he just automatically plays at a high level. It's going to be growing pains. People got to be patient with these young quarterbacks, man. This is why Tom Brady said some of these guys shouldn't be playing. Anthony Richardson was supposed to be the backup to Gardner Minshew, but they started him because they thought they could win with his athleticism. But the problem is, you can't rely on his athleticism as much as you thought you could because of how injury prone he tends to be when he runs the football too much. But AR, I think he's going to get better. I think he'll put it all together a little bit later on during the season, but I don't really see him being super consistent this year. I'm getting really concerned about Caleb Williams. We know that the Chicago Bears don't have a good track record when it comes to quarterbacks. Chicago is the place that quarterbacks actually go to die. And with what we're seeing out of Caleb Williams right now, it's just really disappointing. Because I don't believe that he was overhyped. I did believe that he was a generational talent. As long as he went to a good situation where he had a good offensive coordinator. And Shane Waldron was the OC the last couple of years in Seattle, mostly during the prime years of Russell Wilson. And his offenses mostly depended on Russ being Superman. They didn't really give him a lot of support. The rushing attacks in Seattle with Waldron calling the plays were never good. And Russell Wilson was doing everything. And you can see his offense looking the same way that it did in Seattle. You're not helping the quarterback. Caleb Williams is too young to be having to be Superman for this team. And I think that the main reason why they drafted Caleb Williams was because Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus, they feel pressure on them because they know that if this season goes left, they're going to have to make some changes. Ryan Poles may have to fire Matt Eberflus. And Matt Eberflus, you know, he might not be the only thing that ends up smoking out of this season. Maybe they end up firing Ryan Poles as well, and they just bring a new staff in there because Poles assembled a really good group of receivers around Caleb Williams, but he didn't do anything to address the offensive line that much. And the offensive line is a big reason why Caleb Williams can't get no protection in the pocket and why the run game can't get going. And you're not going to win a lot of games when your rookie quarterback has to throw 52 times. And I had one of my friends that texted me and said that I told you about Caleb Williams. He's trash. He's garbage. Like, dude, you got to understand that when you are a young quarterback and you enter a situation when you got a head coach on the hot seat, a dysfunctional organization, it's a tough situation for a guy like Caleb Williams that despite the talent and all the hype that he had coming in to thrive in, because basically Matt Eberflus is saying, hey, Caleb, I need you to save my job. I didn't like Justin Fields because I couldn't trust him in the fourth quarter. So I'm bringing you in because you're supposed to be an upgrade from what Justin Fields was. And so far, Justin Fields has looked like the better quarterback than Caleb Williams. And that's the big mistake that the Chicago Bears made when they made the choice to move on from Justin Fields to go to Caleb Williams, because this isn't the ideal situation for a rookie quarterback. When you got a head coach on the hot seat, you know, that means that he's putting a lot of stock into this rookie quarterback working out and being able to save his job. And this is kind of the same mistake that they made when they drafted Justin Fields. Remember, when they took Justin Fields, Matt Nagy, his job security was in question. He was on the hot seat. And when you have a head coach on the hot seat drafting these young quarterbacks, it's more so out of desperation. Yeah, they want to develop this dude, but they need him to be good right now, and it put a lot of weight on his shoulders. And when you can't help your quarterback out by not giving him a run game, allowing him to get sacked 7 times like he did against the Houston Texans, you're ruining his confidence, you are holding back his development, and you're just setting yourself up to get fired. I don't even know if Matt Eberflus is going to last throughout this season. He could get fired as early as week 12, week 11 with how things are going. Yeah, the defense is playing at a high level, but when you have a rookie quarterback that's making rookie decisions, trying to do too much, the game just seems too fast for him, you know, you got to be able to help him out, and the Chicago Bears can't do that, and they've had a history of being unable to develop young quarterbacks. Look how Justin Fields is winning games in Pittsburgh. He's taking care of the football. He's been dependable in the fourth quarter. He actually was really good in the fourth quarter in their win against the Los Angeles Chargers today. That was probably the best fourth quarter display that he had for the majority of his career. Normally, he's one of the worst fourth quarter quarterbacks in the NFL. If you got the game on the line and you need Justin Fields to win it for you in the fourth, he normally chokes. So I think that Justin Fields not working out in Chicago shows more about why Chicago is a quarterback graveyard, because they just aren't in a good situation for young quarterbacks to develop, because they just have too much weight that gets put on them, and they do a poor job of building a team that can be a complementary football squad. All it is with Chicago right now is Caleb Williams sling the football all over the field and win us games, and that's a poor game plan to have with the rookie quarterback, and that's why Caleb is struggling. He's getting no support out there. You can be the greatest prospect in the world, but when you have so many expectations and you don't have a team that can give you some help, you got to do everything by yourself. Like, you're going to have games when it looks ugly like how it has these last couple of weeks. You know, you got to play complementary football. The reason why Jaden Daniels has been the best rookie quarterback up to this point is because Washington can run the football. Brian Robinson, he's been absolutely sensational this year. Bo Nix, he has struggled up until this game against the Buccaneers because the Broncos haven't been able to run the football. Same thing with all these other rookie quarterbacks that are out there, man. You got to run the football to help them out. And despite the talent that they have at wide receiver, their offensive line just isn't good enough. Football is still win and loss in the trenches. People keep saying how Caleb needs to get better in the pocket. How the hell is he supposed to get better in the pocket when he has no damn time to throw the football from within the pocket, man? The shit makes no damn sense to me. You're going to criticize his pocket presence, but he never really has a clean pocket to throw to the majority of times, man. Make it make sense. You know, Matt Eberflus is going to get fired, and you know who they're going to hire? The Lions offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. And when he comes in there, he's going to build the offense around Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams is going to end up looking like the quarterback we are expecting him to be coming out of USC. But I'm not about to call him a bust. I already had a little bit of a bad feeling about Chicago coming into this year because it just seems like Matt Eberflus wanted this dude to save his job instead of being committed to his long-term development. Because if he was, he wouldn't continue to allow him to not have support. The main reason everybody was excited about this supporting cast was because it was going to make things easier for Caleb Williams. He was going to have a run game to lean on. He was going to have a decent offensive line to protect them, open up lanes in the run game, but he hasn't had anything. You want this dude to be Superman. He is the first pick, but it's like, Jesus, man. Come on. You got to support your young quarterback, man. You got to. And the Bears aren't doing it. How about the Carolina Panthers absolutely destroying the Las Vegas Raiders? It was 36-22, but when you watch this game, it was just an absolute beatdown. And you want to know what's so funny about this win for Carolina? You know, when Bryce Young got benched, the media was saying how the Carolina Panthers set Bryce Young up to fail. He ain't have no weapons. He ain't got no receivers. He ain't got no offensive line. Well, isn't it funny how now, with Andy Dalton at the helm at quarterback for the Panthers, they all of a sudden got weapons? Deontay Johnson was going off 122 receiving yards, 8 receptions for a touchdown. Chuba Hubbard couldn't be stopped at anything on the ground. He had over 100. He was a force in the passing game. This was Carolina's best game that they played in pretty much 2 years. And Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, was letting out shots against the Las Vegas Raiders. 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. The Panthers look like a competent team with Andy Dalton at the helm at quarterback. And the national media owes Carolina an apology because they put all of Bryce Young's struggles on the team not being good, but all of a sudden they make this quarterback change and They're beating the hell out of a team that just beat the Ravens last week. You know, Andy Dalton, although he is a backup quarterback at this point in his career, he can be elevated to a higher level than expected because of how good of an offensive mind Dave Canales is. Even though this is a one-off performance, he may not be able to continue this level of play for the rest of this season. You're not going to see Andy Dalton play any worse than what Bryce Young did. You know, Carolina has a head coach that was responsible for the resurgence of Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith in back-to-back years. I refuse to believe that this dude isn't a good football coach. You know, and that's why I never felt like the Panthers were a bad situation for Bryce this year. Last year, you could make that argument, but this year, all of the weapons that they brought during the offseason to help him succeed, you saw Andy Dalton thriving with those guys on the field. He threw a dime to Adam Thielen for a touchdown. He got injured, but everybody had a chance to showcase their abilities. Even Xavier Legette had a few moments when he flashed in the pan because of Andy Dalton, that quarterback. It's funny how different your team can look when you get some actual good quarterback play. The defense looked really nice, man. I mean, I thought that the Panthers had the worst defense in football after how bad they played the first 2 weeks. And I know that when you got an ineffective offense, that does you no favors. And they even had a few plays against the Raiders that, you know, they gave up some big passing yards. They gave us some big passing plays. But for the most part, with how good this offense was, their defense didn't have to be on the field for the amount of plays that they were when Bryce Young was at the helm. And what's funny is, I know nobody's going to talk about how good Andy Dalton was because nobody wants to admit the truth about Bryce Young, which is he is a bust. He can't play. It doesn't matter where you trade him to. He can't see in the middle of the field. You got to design the offense that's just so dumbed down and simplistic to help Bryce Young succeed at this level. And Bryce Young isn't a good quarterback. This dude has to be rebuilt and developed from the ground up. His footwork isn't good. His accuracy, his mechanics are off whack. Andy Dalton showed the day that Bryce Young was the problem. The Carolina Panthers, as dysfunctional as what they are, it was a reason why they moved on from this brother so fast, because guys were frustrated. You couldn't evaluate the team with how bad Bryce Young was. They were struggling to get the ball past the 50-yard line. So it's no surprise that this team played as good as what they did against the Las Vegas Raiders, a team that really isn't that good themselves. They got their own quarterback issues going on over there. Andy Dalton, you can say that he still is a backup caliber quarterback all you want to, but with some of these backup guys, they've shown that if you plug them into the right system with the right head coach that actually knows offense, you can get a lot of juice out of these dudes. Look at Sam Darnold right now. This dude is playing at an MVP level. You mean to tell me that Dave Canales, who helped resurrect Geno and Baker, can't end up getting a little bit left out of the tank in the red rifle? Come on now. The Panthers got a good squad, and they showed it this afternoon against the Raiders. The Raiders may not be a good team, but they got a damn good defense. So for them to get this win means everything for them, because that still means that they got a lot of football left, and they got a reason to not tank and throw in the season. There were Panthers fans that were already talking about what quarterback are they going to draft in next year's draft. You know, you're still going to have those conversations, but right now you can kind of put those to the back burners and talk about the team that you have this year, because I still like your chances to win this division. I don't care what y'all tell me about how devoid of talent the Panthers are. Like, they got a decent enough team. With the lack of good coaching in this division, they can win this thing. Atlanta's 1-2, they're 1-2. The Saints are 2-1. You know, you're still well within reach to be able to turn your season around. And we've seen a lot of crazy resurrection stories at quarterback over these last couple of years. Like, if Joe Flacco can come off the couch and lead the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs, you got Geno Smith coming out of nowhere and looking like a good quarterback. You mean to tell me that Andy Dalton can't make one last run and the last end of his career and help Carolina make it to the playoffs in the weakest division in the NFL? I mean, come on, man. We got stories like this every year in the NFL. You got some wash dude that comes out of nowhere and he plays some serviceable football. Carolina got some weapons, and you seen it today. And what's even scarier is that they didn't even get Jonathan Brooks back. That brother is a beast. You know, I can't wait to see him come back off that injury, man, because once they get him rolling and you got that 2 running back system going with him and Chuba Hubbard, Carolina's going to be a scary team. I'm trying to tell y'all, man. Like, Andy Dalton ain't going to be balling out like this every week, but he's going to keep the Carolina Panthers in games. And that's all you really can ask for if you're a Panthers fan, man, because your expectations weren't that high coming in to this season to begin with. You just want to watch a Carolina Panthers game and not feel like you're being tortured because the game is already over at halftime. You want to see a competitive football team. You can respect that. It gives you a reason to tune in. And with Andy Dalton, the Panthers actually have some hope now. You seen how those guys on the sidelines were dapping them up. They were rallying behind them. You know, like, don't be surprised if you see Andy Dalton and Carolina turn their season around and they shock the world and they end up being right in the thick of things to win this division, because it's not as good as what a lot of y'all think. Antonio Pierce had some cryptic comments after the Raiders lost to the Carolina Panthers. Here's what he had to say.
That the team just didn't seem to show up tonight.
No.
The team just didn't seem to show up tonight.
No, they didn't. I think as the game went on, I don't think it was a team. I think there was definitely some individuals that made business decisions and will make business.
Guys were out there making business decisions, and they're going to have to make some business decisions. Who do you guys think this comment was referring to? To me, I think he was taking some shots and throwing shade at Davante Adams, because during this game, when Carolina got down 27-7, they cut the Davante Adams on the sideline, and his body language showed that he was done with this team. He was tapped out of the game, and we hear these stories pop up about Davante Adams. It seems like every week people want to try to make it seem like he's disgruntled with the Raiders, but this is a pretty big issue. It's not like the media is making this a bigger story than what it is, because if you watch the Netflix docuseries Receivers that followed all of the wideouts around George Kittle, Davante Adams, Justin Jefferson, Debo last year, Davante Adams wasn't having a good time playing for the Raiders last season. He was getting pissed off because he was getting passes that were getting him messed up, getting him injured. The quarterback play wasn't good. He was a little bit responsible for why Jimmy Garoppolo got benched. He had a little bit of some say-so in that decision. And with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew at quarterback, it's not going to satisfy Davante Adams. And it seems like the Raiders are trying to appease him. They're trying to make it work, but it's hard to appease a wide receiver that all he has known throughout the majority of his career is playing with good quarterbacks. When he got traded to the Raiders, the main reason why he wanted to come to Las Vegas was because of the relationship that he had with Derek Carr, because they both played with each other during their college days at Fresno State. Him and Derek Carr are pretty close, and he was a little hurt when Derek Carr ended up getting the boot. And then you bring in Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. These aren't high-level quarterbacks. And regardless of how good your defense is, when you don't get competent quarterback play, guys get frustrated. And Davante Adams isn't one of those wide receivers that's going to have a lot of patience for incompetent quarterback play. And as much as you Raiders fans want to make it seem like this is all hearsay, this is just media-made BS, no, like, if you watch that Netflix docuseries, Davante Adams was frustrated. And the same issues that you saw him frustrated in last year are the same situations that continue to arise. Like, guys just can't get him the football. The team sucks. Like, Antonio Pierce, it would be in their best decision to get rid of Davante Adams, because this team right now isn't that good. You're probably not going to be a playoff team, and you don't want to hold a guy hostage that's unhappy, because it just ruins the vibe in your locker room. And Antonio Pierce is trying to establish a culture. And if he wants to be able to change the culture of the Raiders around, you got to get rid of guys that act like they don't want to be there. And from judging Davante Adams' body language throughout this game against the Carolina Panthers, he looked like a guy that was miserable playing for the silver and black. You want guys that want to be there. Davante Adams doesn't look like he wanted to be there. During the offseason, he was making some jokes about maybe them signing Tom Brady despite his age. Like, There's always truth to every joke. My OGs used to always tell me this. And, like Davante Adams has played with nothing but greatness at quarterback with Aaron Rodgers for most of his career. So with him being up there in age, probably about to retire within the next 2-3 years, he wants to go out as a winner. And you can say that, well, if he wanted to be a winner, he should have stayed in Green Bay. He even said that he regretted not giving Jordan Love a shot. He said this. I'm not making this up. So, there are some comments that Davante Adams has made publicly that can support these claims that he's not happy in Las Vegas. He wants to win. He's a competitor. He doesn't enjoy being down 27-7 to the freaking Carolina Panthers going into the fourth quarter. Last week, they beat the Baltimore Ravens in comeback fashion. It just seems like anytime this team looks like they're making progress, they take 2 steps forward and then 10 steps backwards the next game. If you are Antonio Pierce and General Manager Tom Telesco, you got to trade this man. Trade him to the New York Jets. Trade him to wherever he wants to go that gives him the best chance to win. Try to get some draft compensation, because it's not about, who are we going to replace Davante Adams with. It's about having players that want to be playing for the Las Vegas Raiders. And this is going to be a tough season. It's going to be hard for this team to make it to the playoffs. So you're going to have high character guys that want to be there, or are going to be able to roll with the punches. Davante Adams is not a guy that you rebuild with. He's not a guy that you just give a random quarterback to and you expect him to be happy. Like when you play with greatness and you get used to something, it's hard to settle for less. It's like if you end up dating a chick that's a 9 and it ends up not working out, are you all of a sudden going to go back out on the dating market and start looking for 8s and 5s? No, if you date a dime, once you date a dime, you can never go back because you can never see yourself downgrade. And that's the situation that Davante Adams is in. He's played with Aaron Rodgers, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and Derek Carr. As much as people want to trash on him, he's probably the second best quarterback that the Raiders have had since Rich Gannon. And so, I'm not saying like he's the second best quarterback in Raiders history, but I'm saying within the last couple of decades, he's the best QB the Raiders have had come into their franchise. And he gave them stable quarterback play. But now you're trying to give a guy like Davante Adams, who went from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr. He was cool with Derek Carr. He was an average to slightly above average quarterback, but now you give him Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, who are below average quarterbacks, and you got people trying to say, well, if everything goes right, they can be serviceable. No, this isn't one of those situations you can expect a guy like Davante Adams to be satisfied with. The dude obviously wants to go. The body language says it all. Go back and watch that Panthers game, man. He didn't look like somebody that enjoyed having fun playing for the Raiders. And I didn't really hear his name called that much in the fourth quarter. And I really believe that Antonio Pierce, he made these comments kind of directed at the whole team, but Davante Adams in particular, man. It's hard to have a culture that's bought into you when you have a guy like Davante Adams that's not happy to be there. Trade him. Doesn't matter who you're going to replace him with. The point is he doesn't want to be there, and you don't want to keep guys that don't want to be a part of your organization. It just makes sense as far as keeping the team morale high and not having to deal with another distraction. And Davante Adams is going to become a bigger distraction if the Raiders can't start winning football games again. The Pittsburgh Steelers took care of business against the Los Angeles Chargers. They get a 20-10 win. Justin Fields more and more starts to look more like the answer at quarterback for the Steelers. And I'm not just saying for this season, but long term, because he's quietly starting to get better every single game. The first couple of games, they were scared to ask him to do too much, but late in the fourth quarter against the LA Chargers, he had a 50-something yard touchdown pass to Calvin Austin. And it looks like Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin now are opening up the playbook to Justin Fields a little bit more. They got a little bit more confidence in him throwing the football, especially in the second half of these games. And for Justin Fields right now, you have to be the clear-cut QB1 for the rest of this season. Even if Russell Wilson is fully healthy, he's ready to go, he's the answer right now at quarterback. He gives the Steelers the best chance to win because you got more big play potential with him in. He had a nice throw downfield to George Pickens at some point during this game. He is more explosive running the football, even though he didn't do much on the ground. In this game, he did have a rushing touchdown, and Justin Fields has accounted for all 3 of the Steelers' touchdowns that they've scored so far this season. And for Russell Wilson, I don't really see the point in starting him over Justin Fields because you know what you have in Russ at this point. You got a guy who's an aging veteran. He's struggling to stay healthy. And when you got a guy that has the age that Russ has and he has these injury problems, it's a little bit of a sign that he's starting to decline. Because those injuries, especially those calf injuries, normally when you have to deal with them early into the season, you're never really able to completely shake from them, and it hinders your play. And Russell Wilson doesn't have the same athletic ability that Justin Fields has to make the Steelers' offense as good as what it's been so far. Yeah, scoring 20 points still isn't all that impressive, but Russ wouldn't be able to do that better because he can't extend plays and he can't be a factor in the run game. Justin Fields brings a dynamic element to the Steelers' offense that they haven't had since Big Ben retired. He can just do so much, and he just makes it so hard to defend your offense because you don't know what you're going to do with Justin. You could use a design quarterback run with him. You can end up getting play action going with him. He has a great arm. He's pretty accurate throwing the football downfield. I want Justin Fields to be the starter for the rest of this year because I want to see what this dude has. I want to see how good Justin Fields is with a high-level organization. You see how much of a shit show things are right now with the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams. Chicago has shown that they're a quarterback graveyard. You go to Chicago, that's where you go to die when it comes to your career as a quarterback in the NFL. The locker room is rallying behind Justin Fields. He has the Steelers 3-0 right now. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The Steelers are winning games. Allow Justin Fields to continue to get more comfortable in this offense. We don't need to see anything out of Russell Wilson. If anything, you want to see a young guy in Justin Fields completely leaving no doubt that he's the better of the 2 options. If Russell Wilson was outright better than Justin Fields, I guarantee that he would be starting right now. Because if you believe that Russell Wilson is this good, if you're Mike Tomlin, you believe that even if he's at 70, 80%, he's not fully healthy, he still gives you a better chance to win than what Justin Fields does. But he doesn't, which is why Mike Tomlin has kind of come to reality that Justin Fields is the guy. I think what has happened is that it was set in stone that Russ was going to be the starting quarterback. Despite how well Justin Fields was playing in the preseason and training camp, Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith wanted to throw Russell Wilson out there. But with them dealing with that calf injury, they had no choice but to go with Justin Fields. And he kind of has exceeded their expectations to the point you're in a situation now, you probably promised Russell Wilson an opportunity to start this year. But he's playing so good, you're 3-0. Why would you bench him? It's working. There's no way to get away from it. And you're not really going to get any better of Russell Wilson that much. You might as well keep riding with the hot hand. That's what these quarterback battles are all about. When you have a quarterback controversy, you ruin it when you end up benching the hot guy. Right now, Justin Fields is hot. He's playing winning football for Pittsburgh. He did throw an interception against the Chargers, but it was a tip pass. I don't really put it on him. He's been playing mistake-free football for the majority of this season up to this point. Something that we didn't see him do that much in Chicago. He actually was able to win the game for the Steelers in the 4th quarter. Remember, since 2021, Justin Fields has been the NFL's worst performing quarterback in the 4th quarter of games. So with him to play as well as what he did in the final 15 minutes against the Los Angeles Chargers shows the growth that Justin Fields is making as the starting QB for Pittsburgh. There's no reason to take this dude out. Now, I got some takes about the Los Angeles Chargers in this game. The Steelers' defense is playing extraordinary. They haven't allowed more than 10 points in the game these first 3 weeks of the season. They've been shut down when it comes to their run defense. They held the Chargers to under 100 yards. And you know the identity of the Chargers this year, Jim Harbaugh as the head coach, is running the football, being a physical team. But the Chargers were unable to do that because they're beat up front. You got injuries to Joey Bosa on the D-line. He got injured really early into this game, early in the first quarter. Rashawn Slater, one of your starting tackles, he got injured. Justin Herbert had to leave in the fourth quarter because he aggravated that ankle injury. The Chargers were really hot, but now they're starting to cool off a little bit. Even though this is one loss, if Justin Herbert has to miss extended time or he has to play with this ankle injury, and you also got to deal with the injuries to Joey Bosa and Rashawn Slater, you're in trouble. Because you never were really that deep anyway coming into this year, and you weren't really the most talented team. The main reason why I've been high on the Chargers, and most people in the media have been high on the Chargers, is because Jim Harbaugh is such a good coach that you can give him an average roster, and he can elevate it to being a playoff team due to how good of a coach he is. You got a good defense coached by Jesse Minter. You don't make a lot of mistakes, and Jim Harbaugh's style of winning has worked everywhere he's been. But if you don't have a capable quarterback and you can't protect Justin Herbert, then you pretty much have a situation where you're a lame duck. You know, and it's similar to last year. The Chargers couldn't protect J. Herb, and he was dealing with injuries, and that's why 2023 went so left for Brandon Staley and company. Even if your defense does play well, they can keep you in games. You got to have a quarterback that can make a few throws that can win you the ball game, and you don't really have that with the backup that you have in. And if Justin Herbert has to miss significant time or he's playing through this injury, it drastically alters the trajectory that the Chargers season was on with this injury. But this was a well-played game by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Even though the Chargers aren't a great offensive team, you know, they still are a team that, you know, they can pound you up front if you're not stout when it comes to your run defense and if you don't have guys in the trenches. And this is quietly becoming one of the better defenses that Mike Tomlin has had as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The secondary is pretty good, although they did allow Quentin Johnson to score a touchdown early. You didn't really see them giving up too many big plays after that. The run defense is stout. This is a complete defense that the Steelers have this year. You got a few injuries, but you got a lot of depth to overcome them as well. So I love the way that the Steelers are playing, and your schedule isn't that tough. You got the Colts coming up. You can win that game, be 4-0. You can split with Baltimore and Cincinnati. And you also got to play a few other teams that aren't that good, like the Washington Commanders and whatnot. So the Steelers definitely, on the path that they have right now, could find themselves not just being a playoff team, but being AFC North champions this year, even though it wasn't really expected coming into this season due to the uncertainty that they had at the quarterback position. So this is it for this episode of JT Sports Live. Shout out to everybody that tuned in. Shout out to my guy M Sparks. He says Pittsburgh Steelers for life. Shout out to my guy Here We Go Show. What's going on, man? Shout out to my guy Dubs, the money man. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in on YouTube and X. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor. Give us a 5-star review. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss when we drop new content and when we go live. I would do the call-in show, but it's so late. I got to get up early. I'll end up doing a call-in show later on this week. But I appreciate everybody that tuned in. Make sure you give us a 5-star review. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports